The wind howled across the plains, carrying flakes of snow that stung like tiny needles against exposed skin. May and Lin Zhao huddled together, their thin prairie dresses offering little protection against the merciless winter. The identical twin sisters trembled, their almond eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of shelter. Their journey west had been one of desperation after fleeing the railroad camp where they'd worked since arriving from China 5 years ago. The foreman's advances had grown too dangerous to ignore. "We should have stayed on the trail," Lynn whispered, her breath forming a cloud in the frigid air. "At least there were others." May squeezed her sister's hand. "Those men would have found us by morning. The snow will hide our tracks." Her voice carried the same quiet determination that had brought them across an ocean at 18, seeking fortune to send home to their ailing parents. The snow was falling heavier now, beginning to accumulate on their shoulders and hair. Their matching faces, delicate yet strong-featured, were reddened by the cold. 5 miles back, they'd abandoned the wagon train they'd joined after escaping the railroad camp. The sisters had overheard whispers among the men, plans to sell them to a brothel in the next town. "Look there," May pointed toward a distant flicker of light. "Perhaps a homestead." Lynn squinted through the thickening snowfall. "It's too far. We'll never make it before nightfall." "We'll die here if we don't try," May replied, pulling her sister forward. Each step became more difficult as the snow deepened, soaking through their worn boots. The light seemed to taunt them, appearing closer than farther as the landscape played tricks on their exhausted minds. Night was falling fast when Lynn stumbled, pulling May down with her into the snow. "I can't, May. I can't go any further." "You must," May insisted, though her own limbs felt leaden. She helped her sister to her feet, but after a few more steps they both collapsed. The cold had a strange comfort to it now, a seductive whisper promising rest. They huddled together as they had done since childhood, arms wrapped around each other as the snow began to cover them in a silent white blanket. "I'm sorry," Lynn murmured, her eyes closing. "We came so far." "Together," May whispered back. "Always together." The sound came faintly at first, the rhythmic crunch of hooves breaking through snow. May forced her eyes open, wondering if she was dreaming. A large figure on horseback materialized from the darkness, the lantern he carried casting long shadows across the snow. Jedediah Cooper pulled his horse to a stop, raising his lantern higher. He'd been tracking a wounded elk when he spotted what looked like a dark smudge against the snow. Now he could see they were people, women from the look of their dresses, nearly covered by the fresh snowfall. "Hello there," he called, dismounting quickly. When there was no response, he rushed forward, kneeling beside the two figures. They were young women with identical faces, their skin taking on the bluish tinge of severe cold. For a moment he thought he was too late, until one of them, or perhaps both, stirred slightly. "Please," one whispered, her accent thick but her English clear. "Don't kill us." Jedediah's weathered face creased with concern. "Kill you? I'm here to help." He quickly removed his heavy buffalo coat and wrapped it around both women. "I'm going to take you to my cabin. It's not far." With strength born from years of frontier life, he lifted both sisters and somehow managed to secure them on his horse. He led the animal on foot, trudging through the deepening snow toward his homestead. The sisters drifted in and out of consciousness, clinging to each other even in their near-frozen state. Jedediah's cabin appeared through the swirling snow, a solid structure with smoke curling from the chimney. He'd left the fire burning when he'd set out hunting, thank God. He carried the women inside, laying them near the hearth. "Stay with me now," he murmured, working quickly to build up the fire. The sisters' clothes were soaked through. With clinical efficiency born of necessity, he removed their wet dresses and wrapped them in every blanket he owned. He worked through the night, rubbing their limbs to restore circulation, spooning broth between their blue-tinged lips and keeping the fire roaring. By dawn, color had returned to their faces. May was the first to fully awaken, momentarily panicking at the unfamiliar surroundings until she felt Lynn's hand in hers. Their eyes met in silent communication before both turned to the man slumped in a chair nearby, his chin resting on his chest in exhausted sleep. "He saved us," Lynn whispered. May nodded, studying their rescuer. He was older than them by perhaps 15 years, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and a beard covered the lower half of his face. Not the kind of white man they had learned to fear. Jedediah stirred, his eyes opening to find two identical pairs of dark eyes watching him warily. He straightened, offering a gentle smile. "You're awake. That's good." He spoke slowly, clearly. "I'm Jedediah Cooper. This is my home." "I am May Zhao. This is my sister Lynn," May replied formally. "We are grateful for your help, Mr. Cooper." Jedediah nodded, standing to check the fire. "You can call me Jed. Most folks do." He moved to a pot hanging near the fire. "There's stew. You need to eat to get your strength back." The sisters exchanged glances again. 5 years in America had taught them caution around men who offered help. There was always a price. "Why did you help us?" Lynn asked directly. Jedediah paused, seeming surprised by the question. "Couldn't leave you to freeze, could I? Not and call myself a human being." He filled 3 bowls with stew. "Eat now, questions later." The sisters accepted the food, their hunger overcoming suspicion. The rich stew warmed them from within, and they ate in silence while Jedediah busied himself around the cabin, giving them space. "You said, 'Please don't kill us,' when I found you," he finally said, sitting across from them. "Who were you running from?" May and Lynn exchanged another look. "Men from the railroad," May answered carefully. "And then men from the wagon train." Understanding darkened Jedediah's eyes. "I see." He didn't ask for details, which relieved the sisters. "Well, you're safe here for now. Storm's likely to last another day at least. After that, we'll figure something out." "We cannot pay you," Lynn said bluntly. "Didn't ask for payment," Jedediah replied, equally direct. "Just rest now." The storm raged for 3 days, during which the sisters slowly regained their strength. They insisted on helping with chores despite Jedediah's protests, cooking meals from his simple provisions and cleaning the small cabin. They learned he had lived alone since his wife died in childbirth 5 years earlier, their infant son following her hours later. He'd been a trapper before settling on this land to raise horses, selling them to the army and to settlers passing through. On the evening of the 3rd day, as the storm finally began to abate, Lynn approached Jedediah as he sat mending a bridle by the fire. "When the snow clears, we will leave," she said firmly. "We do not wish to burden you." "And go where?" Jedediah asked without looking up. "West," May answered from where she sat darning one of the dresses Jedediah had dried for them. "There is work in California, we hear." Jedediah's hands stilled. "It's 1,000 miles to California. Winter's just beginning. You'd never make it." "We have no choice," Lynn replied. "You do, actually." Jedediah set the bridle aside and looked at them directly. "I need help here. The horse business is growing. Too much for one person." He gestured around the cabin. "Place needs tending, too. I can offer fair wages, your own quarters once I build an addition in spring, and my word that you'll be treated with respect." The sisters stared at him, then at each other, their identical faces reflecting matching suspicion and hope. "Why would you do this?" May asked. Jedediah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I know what it is to be alone in this country, and because I could use the help." He paused. "It's just an offer. Come spring, if you still want to head west, I'll even help outfit you properly." "We will discuss it," Lynn said formally. That night the sisters whispered together in the small alcove Jedediah had created for their privacy, weighing their options. They had learned to trust no one in their 5 years in America, yet something about the quiet horseman seemed genuine. "He has been honorable," May whispered. "So far," Lynn countered. "But we have nowhere else to go until spring regardless." "Then we stay until spring," May concluded. "We work hard, save our wages, and then decide." In the morning they gave Jedediah their answer. He nodded, seeming pleased but not triumphant. "Good. We'll start with the horses tomorrow." The days settled into a rhythm. Jedediah taught the sisters about caring for his 15 horses, magnificent creatures that initially terrified the young women. They learned to feed, groom, and eventually ride them. In return, they brought order to Jedediah's bachelor existence, cooking meals that incorporated techniques from their homeland with the limited ingredients available. Slowly, cautiously, trust began to build. Jedediah was a man of few words but consistent actions. He never entered their sleeping area, kept his promises, and paid them fairly each week. The sisters saved every penny, still planning for their eventual journey west, but with decreasing urgency. As winter deepened, the isolated cabin became a sanctuary rather than a temporary shelter. On evenings when the temperature dropped so low that the walls creaked, the three would sit by the fire while Jedediah told stories of his travels across the frontier. The sisters, initially reserved, gradually shared tales of their childhood in a small village outside Guangzhou, of parents who had sacrificed to send their daughters to America for better opportunities, not knowing the harsh realities that awaited them. "Our father was a scholar," May explained one night, her fingers working a needle through fabric as she helped Jedediah repair a torn shirt. "But the wars took everything. He taught us to read and write in Chinese and a little English before we left." Lynn nodded, adding, "He said education would protect us in America." A bitter smile crossed her face. It did not. Jedediah's expression darkened. "This country hasn't been kind to those who look different. I'm sorry for that." "You have been kind," May said quietly, her eyes meeting his briefly before returning to her sewing. The moment lingered, something unspoken passing between them that made Lynn glance sharply at her sister. Later that night, as they lay in their alcove, Lynn whispered, "Be careful, sister. Kindness from a man often hides other intentions." May turned to face her twin. "Not all men are like those we've known. He has been honorable." "Even honorable men want wives eventually," Lynn warned. "And we promised each other never to be separated." May reached for her sister's hand in the darkness. "Nothing will separate us. We are two halves of one whole, always." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Jedediah was in the barn with the sisters, showing them how to check a mare's pregnant belly when the sound of approaching horses caught their attention. His hand instinctively moved to the rifle leaning against the wall. "Stay here," he instructed, moving to the barn door. 3 riders approached, their horses leaving deep tracks in the snow. Jedediah recognized the lead rider, Marshal Thomas Burke from the settlement 30 miles east, accompanied by 2 deputies. "Cooper," Burke called, dismounting with a grunt. He was a barrel-chested man with a perpetually suspicious expression. "Need to have a word." Jedediah stepped out, positioning himself between the barn and the newcomers. "Marshal, what brings you out this way?" Burke stamped his feet against the cold. "Looking for 2 Chinese girls. Ran away from a legitimate work contract with the railroad. Stole company property, too." His eyes narrowed. "Word is you might have taken in some strays during that big storm a few weeks back." Inside the barn, the sisters froze, exchanging terrified glances. They could hear every word through the thin walls. "News travels fast for being 30 miles and nothing between here and town," Jedediah replied evenly. "Trapper came through, said he spotted smoke from your chimney when nobody should have been here. You were supposed to be down south trading horses." Burke's hand rested casually near his pistol. "These girls are worth a reward, Cooper. Railroad's offering $50 for their return. Lynn clutched May's arm, both remembering the foreman's cruel hands and threatening promises. Being returned would be a death sentence, or worse. "Only strays I've taken in are 4 new colts," Jedediah said, his voice betraying nothing. "But you're welcome to look around if you don't believe me. After you warm up inside. Coffee's hot." It was a calculated risk. As the men stomped toward the cabin, Jedediah caught the barn door with his boot, pulling it open just enough to make eye contact with the terrified sisters. He jerked his head toward the back of the barn, then to the hayloft, before letting the door swing closed. The sisters moved silently, climbing the ladder to the loft where they burrowed deep into the hay. Minutes later, they heard men entering the barn, boots heavy on the wooden floor. "Fine animals," Bert commented, walking between the stalls. "Business must be good." "Can't complain," Jedediah's voice was casual. "Army's always needing remounts." They heard the men checking the stalls, opening the tack room, even looking under a workbench. One deputy started toward the ladder to the hayloft. "Wouldn't bother," Jedediah said. "Nothing up there but hay and probably a nest of mice. Haven't been up there since fall." The deputy hesitated, then turned away. After what seemed an eternity, the men left. The sisters remained hidden, hearts pounding, until Jedediah returned nearly an hour later. "They're gone," he called softly. "It's safe now." They emerged from the hay, faces pale with fear. "They will come back," Lynn said, brushing straw from her dress. "The railroad does not forget." Jedediah nodded grimly. "Probably. Burke's not the type to let things go." He looked at them seriously. "I need to know, did you steal from the railroad like he said?" "No!" both sisters exclaimed simultaneously. May stepped forward. "We took nothing but ourselves. The foreman—" She faltered, unable to speak of what had happened. Lynn finished for her. "He said we belonged to him, that he had paid for us. When we refused his attentions, he locked us in a storage room, said he would sell us to a place where we would learn obedience." Her voice hardened. "We escaped that night." Jedediah's jaw tightened, a muscle working in his cheek. "I believe you." He was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We have 2 choices. You can leave, head west now, try to outrun this. Or—" he hesitated. "Or," May prompted. "Or we make it so they have no claim on you at all." He looked uncomfortable. "There's a judge comes through the settlement every few months. He's a fair man. If you were married to an American citizen, had proper papers—" He trailed off, clearly embarrassed. The sisters stared at him, then at each other in shock. "You would marry one of us?" Lynn asked incredulously. "On paper only," Jedediah hastened to add. "A legal protection, nothing more. You'd still have your freedom, your wages. When spring comes, you could still leave if you wanted." "Which one?" May asked quietly. Jedediah looked genuinely startled by the question. "I hadn't—that is, whichever of you would be willing. It doesn't matter to me." Another silent communication passed between the sisters. Lynn spoke first. "We must discuss this. Alone." Jedediah nodded, clearly relieved to escape the awkward conversation. "Take all the time you need. I'll be in the cabin." Alone in the barn, the sisters faced each other. "It is a practical solution," May said cautiously. Lynn's eyes narrowed. "Is that why you favor it? Practicality?" "What do you mean?" "I've seen how you look at him," Lynn accused. "How you linger when you bring him coffee. How you smile when he praises your work with the horses." May flushed. "That's not—" "Don't lie to me," Lynn interrupted. "Not to me. We promised after what happened at the railroad. No men, no separations. We survived together." "This is survival," May insisted. "And no one is being separated. We would both stay here, both be protected." "Until he decides he wants a real wife, not just a paper one," Lynn countered. What then? The argument continued until dusk, when they finally emerged from the barn with their decision. Jedediah looked up from his place by the fire, his expression carefully neutral. I will do it, Lynn announced formally. I will marry you on paper, for protection. If Jedediah was surprised by which sister had agreed, he didn't show it. All right, then. Judge Thompson should be in the settlement next month. We'll go then. The weeks leading up to their journey to the settlement were filled with tension. Lynn was coolly polite to Jedediah, while May became unusually quiet. Jedediah himself seemed unchanged, continuing their education about the horses and expanding their riding lessons. But there was a new awkwardness between the three of them that hadn't existed before. The day before they were to leave for town, disaster struck. While checking the pregnant mare, Jedediah was kicked hard in the ribs. The sisters heard his shout and ran to find him crumpled against the stall door, struggling to breathe. Ribs, he gasped as they helped him to the cabin. Maybe broken. They eased him onto his bed, May carefully removing his shirt to reveal an already purpling bruise spreading across his side. We need a doctor, she said, looking worriedly at Lynn. Nearest doctor's in the settlement, Jedediah managed through clenched teeth. 2 days' ride. Lynn made a quick decision. I will go. I am the stronger rider. May looked alarmed. Alone? But the marshal. I will be careful, Lynn assured her. You must stay and care for him. If the ribs are broken, they could puncture his lung. Jedediah tried to protest, but was overcome by a coughing fit that left him pale and sweating. The sisters exchanged a look, their earlier tension forgotten in the crisis. Go quickly, May urged. Take Thunder. He's the fastest. Within the hour, Lynn was gone, wrapped in Jedediah's heavy coat and armed with detailed directions to the settlement. May turned her attention to Jedediah, binding his ribs tightly with strips torn from a sheet and brewing willow bark tea for the pain. Night fell. Jedediah's fever rose as infection set in from a deeper injury than they'd realized. May bathed his face with cool water, speaking softly in Chinese when he grew restless. During a moment of clarity, he caught her wrist. If I don't make it, he began. Don't speak that way, she interrupted. Listen, he insisted weakly. Deed to the property is in the metal box under the floorboard by the hearth. Take it, both of you. Make this place yours or sell it and go west. Promise me. Tears filled May's eyes. I promise. But you will live to keep this place yourself. His fingers tightened around her wrist. May, he said softly, it was always you. Her breath caught. What? Should have been you I offered to marry, not just for papers. His eyes closed as unconsciousness claimed him again, leaving May staring at him in shock. For 3 days, May fought to keep Jedediah alive. She barely slept, forcing broth and medicine between his lips, changing the poultice on his wound, and praying to ancestors she feared had forgotten her in this strange land. When she did sleep, it was in the chair beside his bed, her hand resting on his chest to feel each breath. On the dawn of the 4th day, hoofbeats approached. May grabbed Jedediah's rifle, moving cautiously to the window. Relief flooded her as she recognized Lynn, accompanied by an older man who could only be the doctor. The doctor confirmed 3 broken ribs and a deep internal bruise that had become infected. He's young and strong, he told the sisters after treating him. Good chance he'll pull through, thanks to your quick action. He looked curiously between the identical young women. Cooper's a lucky man to have such dedicated helpers. He saved our lives, Lynn said simply. We owe him ours in return. After the doctor left, promising to return in a week, Lynn found May by Jedediah's bedside. The marshal was not in the settlement, she reported, but there was talk of Chinese railroad workers escaped from a camp 50 miles north. They may not be looking for us specifically anymore. May nodded, her eyes not leaving Jedediah's sleeping face. "Something has happened," she said softly, "while you were gone." Lynn tensed. "What?" "He spoke in the fever. Said it should have been me he offered to marry, not just for papers." May finally looked up at her sister. "He has feelings for me, Lynn." Lynn's expression hardened. Fever talk, meaningless. "No," May shook her head. I think I have feelings for him too." The admission hung between them, changing everything. Lynn stepped back as if struck. "You would choose him over me? A white man over your own blood?" "It isn't a choice," May pleaded. "I love you both. Differently." "There is no differently." Lynn's voice rose. "We are one, May. Two halves of one whole. We promised." "We were children then." May stood, facing her sister. "We can still be together, still be sisters, but also be separate people with separate hearts." Lynn turned away, her shoulders rigid. "You've made your choice then." "Lynn, please." "I'll sleep in the barn tonight." The next week passed in strained silence. Jedediah improved steadily, but remained unaware of the rift between the sisters. They cared for him in shifts, never overlapping. Lynn's manner efficient but distant, while May's was gentle and attentive. When Jedediah was finally strong enough to sit up and take notice, he immediately sensed something was wrong. "Have you two argued?" he asked May as she brought him dinner. She hesitated, then nodded. "About the future." "Because of what I said during the fever?" At her surprised look, he smiled weakly. "I remember bits and pieces, enough to know I spoke what I'd been keeping to myself." May set the tray down. "Yes, Lynn feels I am betraying her." Jedediah sighed. "I never meant to come between you. Perhaps it would be better if—" "No," May interrupted firmly. "I will not pretend I don't feel what I feel to keep peace. Not any more." She took his hand. "When we were lost in the snow, I thought we would die. You gave us life again. You gave me a future I never imagined possible." He squeezed her hand. "I've been alone a long time. Never thought I'd find someone to share this life with again. Certainly never expected she'd come stumbling out of a snowstorm." His expression grew serious. "But I won't be the reason you lose your sister." That night, May sought out Lynn in the barn where she'd taken to sleeping. "We need to talk," she said, sitting beside her sister on a hay bale. Lynn remained silent, staring at the lantern light. "Do you remember what Father told us before we left China?" May asked. "He said, 'You go together so you may hold each other up, but one day you must stand on your own.'" "He didn't mean this," Lynn whispered. "Not separate lives." "I think he did," May countered gently. "He knew we couldn't remain two halves of one whole forever, that we would grow into our own women." Lynn finally looked at her, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know how to be without you." "You don't have to be without me. I'm still your sister, still your blood. That never changes." May took her hands. "But I love him, Lynn, and I believe he loves me. I want to build a life here." "What about California, our plans?" May smiled sadly. "That was always more your dream than mine." They talked through the night, years of shared trauma, fears and hopes pouring out between them. By dawn they had reached an understanding. Lynn would stay until spring, helping with the horses and the upcoming foaling season. Then she would decide whether to continue west or remain nearby, perhaps in the settlement where the doctor had mentioned a need for a seamstress, recognizing Lynn's skilled needlework. When they told Jedediah of their decision, relief washed over his face. "This place has always been too big for just one person," he said. "There's room enough here for both of you, in whatever way you choose to stay." As winter began to release its grip on the land, bringing the first hints of spring, Jedediah and May were married by Judge Thompson, who raised an eyebrow at the unusual situation but asked no questions. The ceremony was small, just the three of them and the doctor who had become a friend. That evening, as they sat by the fire in what was now truly their home, Jedediah presented each sister with a document. "Deed to the property," he explained. "Split between the two of you. No matter what happens, you'll always have a home here." Lynn examined the paper with wonder. "Land of our own," she murmured. "Father would never have believed it possible." "To new beginnings," Jedediah raised his cup in toast, "and the storms that bring unexpected blessings." As they clinked their cups together, May caught her sister's eye. The wounds weren't fully healed, the future still uncertain, but for the first time since leaving China, both sisters felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. Not just for survival, but for a life worth living, each in her own way, on their own terms, in this harsh but beautiful country they now called home.